Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict Podcast.
We are here coming to you live. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You only win a Super Bowl 2 times every 5 years, right? Oh! The warm-up act is over. Let's bring in Melissa Etheridge, massive Chiefs fan. Melissa.
Super Bowl champion, 2-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
And he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score! And we'll see you next week, but until then, as always, go Chiefs.
Welcome. This is Wacky Wednesday on the Arrowhead Addict channel. I'm Adam Best here with the Punky QB. Is that Jim McMahon over there? Is that
no. I was looking at Xavier Worthy, and his star was so bright that I had to rock these sunglasses.
There you go. So also here with producer Richard, who was helping us get set up from a tech standpoint. We're a few minutes late, but he's our Jam Master Jay, always saving us. So we appreciate you, Richard. How you doing, man?
I'm good, dude. I'm golden. Last work day of the week for me, going on a nice little golf trip this upcoming weekend, heading out tomorrow morning. Heading to St. Louis. I've actually never golfed in St. Louis, which is wild considering it's only 4 hours away. I know what you guys are thinking. I also, not a fan of STL. I appreciate the Chiefs fans from St. Louis, okay? But you guys don't know how to make pizza. You don't know how to make barbecue. You do have good Italian. I'll give you that. What is your deal with bagels, okay? Learn how to cut a bagel. You guys are psychos over there. But I'm excited because I'm going to go golfing. So things are good right now.
What is St. Louis good at? They're kind of good at rap. They've got Nelly and Sexy Red. I mean, I'm trying to be nice to our St. Louis friends. A lot of people from the Lou now root for the Chiefs because LA stole the Rams back.
I like Nelly. You had me with Nelly. I'll give you that. Let's move on, though, because STL can KICKROCKS.
With the dope rhyme, Sterling Holmes. Well, we've got a good show for you guys today. We're going to dig into Chris Jones from a historical perspective. Should be fun, should be enlightening. I'm very interested to see where Sterling stands on this. But first, a little bit of business.
Oh, yeah, baby. I know football's not going on right now. I know it's OTAs and the regular season hasn't started yet. But you got NBA, you got baseball, you got WNBA, you got golf, and DraftKings is offering a no-sweat bet sign-up bonus for new users. New customers who sign up with code Arrowhead and deposit at least $5 will receive a no-sweat bet up to $1,500 bonus on their first wager. This means if you place a first bet of $50 and you lose, you'll receive a $50 credit in bonus bets straight to your account, up to $1,500. You will also receive a single game parlay reward every day. Using our code Arrowhead not only gets you these bonuses, but also directly supports our podcast. So if you've been considering signing up for DraftKings, make sure you use the code Arrowhead to maximize your first bet. This offer is only available to new customers who are 21 plus and physically present in legal gambling states. Please remember to always gamble responsibly and check the episode description for the full terms of the offer to see if you qualify.
Hot Take Kingdom, baby. You ready? You ready to do this?
Oh, I was born ready.
All right. This week's Hot Take Kingdom is Chris Jones is now the most valuable defensive player in the NFL. Welcome to the kingdom. Just want to preface this that I've always been out in front of most of the football world on this player. I think on my first appearance back on the Arrowhead Addict podcast, I said the first Hot Take Kingdom ever. I said he was a top 7 defender in the league, and I think that was a little low. So we are revisiting this. Yeah.
I have to give you your props, okay? Don't get me wrong, Best. I love ripping on you. I know that. I thoroughly enjoy it. One of my favorite things is to rip on Best. I don't know. Makes me happy. But I will say, I got to get credit where credit is due, and you were completely right. I'm a buffoon. I was the wrong one. I said, is he top 7? I said top 10-ish, and I was wrong because I think he's clear-cut top 5. So, Best, here's to you, okay? Here's to you. I'm proud of you because I was wrong and you were right.
I think the problem here is a few things. First of all, we have to look beyond just interceptions and sacks. That's an antiquated a way of judging who the best defender in the NFL is. It's 2024. Let's dig a little deeper. But I think the playoff sacks or lack thereof, even though his pressure numbers and pass rush win rate were elite, and he was generating cleanup sacks for guys like Frank Clark left and right and batting down balls and causing interceptions. When you look at the sacks in the postseason, I think that was part of why he was underrated. The other reason I don't think he's been considered, even in the consideration for the best defensive player in football, is he's been in the massive shadows of both Aaron Donald, perhaps the greatest defensive player of all time, and Patrick Mahomes, perhaps the most talented quarterback of all time. So that's been tough for him. And I think it can be true that Aaron Donald is the best defensive player in the league, and Chris Jones might have been the second best at times, even though he's the second best at his position. I know that's weird, but it's possible. And I think Jones has been better than Donald the last couple of years anyway. So let's dig into some of the numbers. He's been 11th or better in pass rush win rate among all pass rushers the past 5 years. That's not just defensive tackles. That is edges. He has also averaged a PFF grade of 91 during that stanza. I think the lowest he's ever had in a season-long PFF grade is 89 something. And a lot of times he's 93, 94, one of the highest graded players in the entire league for reference. And here's one of the most important things. During this period, he's been double teamed more than any other pass rusher. Last season, Jones was doubled 72% of the time, more than stud nose tackle Dexter Lawrence. Donald was only doubled 63% of the time. I mean, that's a lot, but that's like 10% less than Jones. The highest edge, Micah Parsons, only 35% of the time. He's getting doubled half as much as Jones. So that's like a wide chasm there. That's a huge gap. And I think the thing I like the best about Chris Jones is like this Derek Thomas clutch factor. He's even better during crunch time. In 2022, he had 10 more fourth quarter or overtime pressures than any other player in football. And he consistently shows up and wrecks games in the fourth quarter. And now I think he might even be more effective in a limited sample size when you kick him outside. His PFF grade at edge has been outstanding, even better than him on the interior. And I think this versatility is what gives Jones the edge over TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, Nick Bosa, and maybe even Micah Parsons. Although Micah Parsons, because of his versatility, is the one player that I think could be in this conversation with him. And I think, why is this so important? Well, not only does he beat double teams better than any other player in football, he can pinpoint the weak spot on your offensive line better than any other player in football. He can be a 3-tech, he can be a 9-tech, you name it. If you have a weak link in your offensive line, he's going to find it. You have to have a Philadelphia Eagles 2022 level offensive line to be scheme-proof against Chris Jones. He will disrupt your offense basically no matter what your offensive coordinator does. You can't stop it. We saw when Jones made both Brock Purdy and Josh Allen miss what could have been game-winning throws in the I guess the AFC divisional round and the Super Bowl. Very late in those games, he disrupted the passing lanes and kind of blocked. I'm trying to think who the tackle was for the Buffalo Bills that got backed into Josh Allen there. And then I think one of the last things here is positional scarcity. It's a little harder to diagnose and develop a dominant pass rushing defensive tackle than edge. I could hear maybe corner. You talk about Sauce Gardner, you talk about Patrick Surtain, but that's kind of a weak link system, the secondary. If they're locking down one side of the field, the quarterback's just going to throw to the other side of the field. It's a little bit easier to work around them than Chris Jones. And Chris Jones has been more durable than guys like Nick Bosa and TJ Watt. That's important when we're talking about the most valuable defender. We say all the time, the best ability is availability. Lastly, Tyreek Hill had 1,800 yards last season, playing with Tua. I think Tua is a good, but just slightly above average quarterback. Tyreek Hill had a ridiculous 3.82 yards per route run last season. That blew away the rest of the league. The Chiefs decided Jones was the more important building block. That's the guy they decided to keep, not Tyreek Hill. So, Sterling, you've heard my case. Are you coming into the castle or are you staying outside the walls?
All right. First and foremost, I think this is a really good conversation and one that I think more folks need to have. I think this is a conversation that even the national media, I think, should get some run with. I found myself, I wanted to make sure I didn't look at any of your notes beforehand. I knew what we were talking about, but I want to make sure I wasn't looking at all those PowerPoints because I like having an initial reaction, right? Mm-hmm. It gives it more
oomph.
More oomph. It's real. It's real. Because my original thought was going to be, yeah, but what about TJ Watt or Nick Bosa? And you brought up the injury concern. I think that's such a valid and quite frankly, a real point to have. Because at some point, that has to play a factor in this. TJ Watt is phenomenal. Nick Bosa is phenomenal. But how often are they able to play the entire regular season, let alone into the postseason 20 games? Very, very rare. And so I'm left thinking, okay, if we're sticking on the defensive line for a moment, because I do think this is a very important distinction, Sauce Gardner is probably the best corner. I think he is the best corner in the NFL. And if you say the best at his position, maybe you can make the case, but most valuable gets thrown in here as well. And I don't think cornerback can be the most valuable because you're completely right. You can only take down one guy. Actually, Angry Drunken German, I think, has a good point here, too. Corner doesn't carry the importance it once did. Quarterbacks are too good at quick distribution, even if you have two solid guys, right? I think cornerback is very important. But
also scrambling, you know?
Yes, and I don't think it's quite what it once was in regards to if you have one solid, if you want a phenomenal corner, you can take away half the field. I don't know that's the same situation anymore. Today's NFL, I think the most important position defensively is normally edge rusher. But for this, I'm going to say pass rusher because Chris Jones is a pass rusher from the interior as well as the edge. So now we're getting into versatility because I think versatility is also a good point here. With Aaron Donald out of the NFL, now that he's retired, this is a legit conversation. I think you have, what's his name? Myles Garrett. I think Myles Garrett can get his name thrown in here because Myles Garrett could play inside or outside, but he's just so good on the outside. Why would you move him on the inside? Because I think he could do both, right? No question. I think Micah Parsons and his versatility is the other guy. I think you're looking at those three guys in particular. I think you are looking on the defensive line. So that gives you those three dudes with Nick Bosa and TJ Watt. The injuries, in my opinion, that takes him out of the equation. So I'm going Myles Garrett, Parsons, and Jones as a clear-cut top three. Okay? Clear-cut top three. Now it comes down to how is your roster, how is your team constructed? Because I think that also is an important distinction. I know it's so easy to say best this, best that. But for example, when you're doing quarterback rankings, let's throw Mahomes out of here for a second because Mahomes is the outlier. Mahomes is so good, he makes every team, I think, a playoff contender. Almost every team, as we did our construction, a playoff contender. Josh Allen or Joe Burrow? I think Joe Burrow makes way more sense, at least in last year's Bengals system, than Josh Allen would. While Josh Allen, I think, made way more sense in the Buffalo Bills organization than Joe Burrow would have. Because Josh Allen's a guy who he can elevate, but you have to take the wildness with him. While Joe Burrow is a guy who I think is a elevator to an extent, but again, I don't want to say system quarterback, but more of a guy who needs weapons around him. Well, I think Josh Allen could elevate his guys just a little bit more. Right? I think I'm not trying to take a knock at either guy. Who's second, who's third, doesn't really matter. I think scheme plays a factor. So defensively, I think scheme plays a factor as well. How do you use Micah Parsons? How do you use Chris Jones? And the way the Chiefs use Chris Jones puts them easy top three. And again, I think you can make the case for number one, just like you said, because with him and Steve Spagnuolo, that is a perfect pairing. I can't get over the fact that they use him on the inside and outside and not just try and do what he wants. Because remember when he wanted to be an edge rusher? They tried for about 4 games. The fact of the matter is he's getting paid that much money. He is an all-pro superstar. Not only did he have the wherewithal to say, fine, I'm going to swallow my pride and move back in, but the Chiefs were able to say, hey, dude, I'm sorry. This ain't your game. You're hurting the team right now. So they moved him back inside, and then occasionally on third down, moved him outside. How many superstars do that? How many superstars have the wherewithal to say, you know what? That's on me. I thought I could do that. That's not my game. Chris Jones did. I thought that took a lot of Stone Cold Jones to do something like that. I'm trying to find a way to talk myself into Chris Jones being number one.
Well, look at the double teams, because he gets double teamed twice as much as Myles Garrett and Micah Parsons, but the pressure numbers are pretty similar. So he's causing about the same amount of damage despite being put in a much tougher situation.
I agree. And now I want to say, I really try and pride myself on not being a homer. I hope everyone who listens to the Arrowhead Addict podcast and just anything I do, I hope you know I try and pride myself on not being a homer, because that's great and all. It's fun talking about how great the Chiefs are, but I like to try and bring some, non-homerism in here sometimes when I'm trying to break this down. And I don't think you are, by the way, Best. I'm not saying you are in this particular instance at all, because Micah Parsons, I think, is the guy you look at. Just based on versatility. I love Myles Garrett, the consistency, the health. I think he's part of the equation. I think it is those top three guys for sure.
Yeah, and with Myles Garrett, just to piggyback on your point, they brought in Zadarius Smith last year, and with a little bit more help, he looked as good as he's ever looked. So I do think that is a factor. But with Chris Jones, he and Aaron Donald have made guys like Frank Clark and Leonard Floyd earn a very, very healthy living. So I think what you do for your teammates, how easy you make life for your teammates, has to be a factor here. And eating double teams for breakfast, what's going to help George Karlaftis more than that?
I think Chris Jones, I think you're right. The amount of double teams that he eats up is going to obviously hurt his sack numbers. So there's always going to have to be a nuanced dive deep in conversation about this, because people will see sacks for Myles Garrett and for Micah Parsons and automatically say they're the best. It's always the same thing with cornerback too. When you see interceptions and everyone's talking about Trayvon Diggs as the best cornerback, right? There was that conversation in Cowboys fans, because he got thrown at so many times. There's an interception or is an 80-yard bomb over his dome. Right? So I think there needs to be nuance with these conversations. And I think Chris Jones, and the fact of the matter is he eats those many double teams, well, that is going to hurt his sack numbers. The fact that he does not play with another superstar. He does have George Karlaftis, who's a very good edge rusher. I really like George Karlaftis, right? But he's not a superstar, right? It's not like he's paired with, I don't know. I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
Crosby.
Max Crosby, who's going to have now Christian Wilkins. That's going to be fascinating to watch in Las Vegas. I'll actually say yes. I'll go in with you. I think Chris Jones is the most impactful and most valuable defensive player in the NFL, because I think if you take Chris Jones off the Chiefs defense, they go from a top 5 defense to 15, 20th.
Yeah.
I'm not even kidding. Like I like a
bottom
lot of the
12,
pieces.
bottom 14.
I like a lot of the pieces on the Chiefs defense, but they don't have a pass rusher who can consistently generate that much impact up the middle. They just don't. The Cowboys, they lose Micah Parsons. Still a pretty good defense, right? I think that defense is still pretty fine. The Browns lose Myles Garrett. Big loss, huge loss. I think that Browns defense is still damn good, though. Like, how far do they drop? I think if you're looking at just impact, even if the Jets lose Sauce Gardner, I love Sauce Gardner. I think he is the best cornerback in football. Jets defense is still salty. The Chiefs lose Chris Jones. I think they take the biggest step back, which I guess for this case, wouldn't that make him the most valuable defensive player in the NFL?
I chose that word with purpose there, because it's really hard to say best. You know, when you weigh in these defensive coordinators like Jim Schwartz, that's the defensive coordinator that Myles Garrett has. He's very good. Steve Spagnuolo is unreal when it comes to dialing things up for Chris Jones late during crunch time. So it's kind of hard when there's not exactly a level playing field. But the main reason for this thought experiment is I think Chris Jones gets disrespected by the national media. I do. I mean, I think they try. I think they think they value him properly, but they don't. And that's because, again, the shadows of Aaron Donald and Patrick Mahomes have almost made it impossible to give Chris Jones his due. But I think it's time. I think with Aaron Donald out of the way and Chris Jones continuously causing mayhem in the postseason. I mean, that game he had 2 years ago in the AFC Championship against the Bengals, he had 10 pressures. Mahomes was hurting. Travis Kelce's back was hurting. They were both not at their best. And Chris Jones put the Chiefs on his back and dragged them to the Super Bowl. So I think we have to, put his career in perspective, and now's the time to do it.
Yeah. I like this question best because it was one that even I, who's obviously we watch Chris Jones all the time. We cover him, and sometimes I don't think we always witness or understand the greatness of a player until it's too late. And putting this into perspective of how valuable he is, we know the value, but I do think it's time that more of the national media started putting him into the conversation of Micah Parsons and the Bosas and the Watts, and I guess not J.J. Watt anymore, and definitely not Derek Watt, and Myles Garrett. Like, I think that Chris Jones' name typically is sixth when the national media starts talking about these guys, when he should be easy top three, and I don't think he's three.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the problem again is sacks, and that the national media values edges, values corners more than defensive tackles. And we've seen sort of a revolution with Aaron Donald and Chris Jones. They've changed football forever. Now we value interior defenders as much as the outside ones. You look at guys like Dexter Lawrence, I mentioned him earlier, Quinnen Williams, these guys are getting Christian Wilkins, they're getting massive, massive deals, because what bothers quarterbacks the most? Outside pressure definitely bothers them, but blowing up things inside, ask Tom Brady, ask Patrick Mahomes. They will tell you it's that inside pressure that really makes life difficult for them more than anything else.
Yeah. I also want to give a shout out to Max Crosby. I think he might be top 5. I think he probably is top 5, and part of that's the amount or the fact that he can play almost every single snap. That blows my mind.
Right.
His motor and endurance, I do think needs a shout out. I hate giving the Raiders credit, but I respect the hell out of Max Crosby. And that dude is so fun to watch. I wish he was a Chief so damn bad. But part of me is also sitting here going, you know what? It is kind of fun watching him and Mahomes go at it and have that little rivalry. As long as he doesn't ever hurt 15. Because I will have strong words. I will write him a strongly worded letter.
As you should. I'm trying to think who else is being left out here. And I just want to add that I have so much respect for Micah Parsons. We talk about him and Myles Garrett all the time. Those guys are freaks of nature. Micah Parsons might be Lawrence Taylor reincarnated. I mean, he's so, so good. But I think the point here is that Chris Jones definitely belongs in that company. I mentioned Patrick Surtain. I think evaluating him on how bad that Denver Broncos defense was last year wasn't fair. I also think we should mention maybe Fred Warner and Roquan Smith in a league where linebackers are struggling now more than ever because of how spread out things are, RPOs, all the motion, how dynamic offenses are. It is a hellacious time to be a linebacker, and those guys do it all and deserve a ton of credit. I don't quite put them in this tier, but I think they deserve an honorable mention.
Yeah, if you're going to say best defender, I mean, I think Fred Warner is the best linebacker in football, and if you want to say that that makes him the best, then I'll entertain it. But as far as valuable, I don't think it can be a linebacker in today's NFL. I just think it almost has to be a pass rusher of some sort. Before we get to the next segment, I do want to give a shout out to Chiefs Fan 04 writing us a nice 5-star review. If you guys want to give us a review as well, we do really appreciate that. And since I like to promise, I don't do it enough, I want to give a shout out to people who write and give us 5-star reviews wherever you get your podcast. This one happens to be from Apple. Chiefs Fan says, the guys are amazing and are hilarious and know their football. All the guys are funny, thank you, and understand the game of football. Also, thank you. Keep up the good work. We will try. They also have a question. They say, how do you guys think that the rookie tight end, Jared Wiley, will he compete with Noah Gray and be the number 2 tight end, or will it be a 3rd tight end, and will Irv Smith be on the outside looking in? What are your thoughts, Best?
I think tight end is changing a little bit. We've seen tight ends get integrated faster recently. Last year, most notably, Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid. Now, he's not a prospect on that level, but he's a tremendous athlete. The question is, can he surpass Noah Gray? Noah Gray does a lot of dirty work for this offense. He has very reliable hands. You don't hear his name a lot. You don't see him in the stat sheet a lot, but he is a very reliable player who's willing to do whatever is asked of him. That is quite valuable, especially if the belldozer is not going to be around. So I don't know. I think he's going to play. I think he's going to see some action. Part of that might be load maintenance for Travis Kelce. I think Travis Kelce is probably going to play less snaps than we've ever seen, because what did we see last year? Just get 87 to the postseason and he'll be, it will be a vintage performance. That's what he does. But you don't want to wear him down too much in September and October. So I think you're going to see them give some snaps to Jared Wiley. I also expect them to play a lot of 12 and 13 personnel, because frankly, it has worked well for the Chiefs. I think Patrick Mahomes thrives in those personnel packages. So I don't know that he's going to be the number 2 tight end, but I expect him to play over Irv Smith and get on the field quite a bit. How about you?
Yeah, I think we're on the same page. I think he's in there over Irv. I think he's going to be a great red zone threat, a la what they hoped Jody Fortson was, or what Jody Fortson somewhat was when healthy. I think him and Noah Gray are a lot different styles at tight end, which I think is interesting. He's just a bigger guy as well. So we'll see how it plays out. I think as the season progresses, you'll see more Jared Wiley. I think on to something as well as just make sure Kelce's healthy heading into the postseason, then he'll turn it on. I do want to point out the Swifties. I took a picture with Travis Kelce at the Big Slick, and that was a very, very fun event. Very cool. And I was talking.
Did you meet Paul Rudd?
I did meet Paul Rudd. Yeah, I see Rudd, Sudeikis, Sheryl Crow.
Damn, nice.
Mahomes was there. He left a little early, but Travis Kelce is such a good dude. And my mom was actually the one that came up with the idea for Mahomes on stage to throw signed balls to Kelce in the crowd, and they were auctioning them off, right? So if you would, it was $15,000 is for Children's Mercy. They raised $3.9 million. This is the 15th year of Big Slick. Over $25 million raised now in that time frame. Extremely cool. I want to give a shout out to my mom. She was the auctioneer. She's been doing it the entire time. I've been helping out with this, so it's been a very fun event for me. Very cool. But it was her idea to have Mahomes do that. So she went to Patrick and goes, "Hey, Patrick, I have an idea. Will you and Kelce do this?" And as gracious as those guys are, knowing that they are the biggest stars in the world, they did that, which I found so cool. Like, not a knock against any other quarterback, or like Rodgers, maybe he would do it because he likes the spotlight, or like Tom Brady. Like, imagine you're still playing. You're in your prime for Mahomes. Like, you're the biggest star in the world right now, in Travis Kelce. And you're doing this to raise money for Children's Mercy. I thought that was so damn cool, so I tweeted about it. And the Swifties found my Twitter account, and they were just hammering that. So you know what? I think I'm a Swiftie now, because they were very kind. They were very helpful to old boy over here.
Gave you some amplification. Well, your mom brought a little action to the auction. Very smart of her. I want to mention one last thing here with the tight ends. I mentioned earlier that it's easier to integrate these guys. And why is that? Well, I think the NFL as a whole has decided that not everybody has to be a move tight end and an inline tight end. You can have basically 2 different positions here. And guys like Travis Kelce and Jared Wiley, they're basically going to be mainly receivers when they're starting out. They're going to be move tight ends and integrated into blocking more as they go. Noah Gray, I don't even know technically what he is. I don't even say he's an inline tight end. He's a little bit of an H-back-ish type player, right? So I like the versatility there, and I'm excited about Jared Wiley long-term.
Yeah, me too.
Let's move on to our next segment. We're calling this 5 super duper early predictions. We haven't got down to the nitty gritty much about next season and what our expectations are. So I wanted to do this. I wanted to pick your brain. I'm going to throw 5 things out there, and you're going to tell me if I'm crazy or these ideas are credible.
They don't have to be mutually exclusive. Best.
Yeah.
You can be crazy and still be right in this instance.
I worded that probably poorly. I kind of like set you up right there for a little T-ball action. But let's get into number 1. After getting Baltimore and Cincy at home in weeks 1 and 2, Visiting the upstart Atlanta Falcons in week 3 is the ultimate trap game.
Yes. Yes, I think so. I'm not saying the Chiefs lose. It's also a prime time game, right? This is prime time against the Falcons. It's crazy. But I think the Falcons are a pretty darn good team. I don't know or think that the Chiefs will overlook the Falcons because, again, it's prime time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I do think the Falcons are going to be a pretty good team this year. They'll win the NFC South, which is basically finish 500. But I like Kirk Cousins. I do. Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, they have some weapons. Offensive line, solid, right? They have a pretty solid offensive line. Chris Lindstrom, I think, is one of the best guards in football. It's him and Joe Tooney. Very, very good. Defensively, they're solid. They're good stopping the run. They're not great getting after the quarterback. But quite frankly, no one's that good getting after the quarterback when you have Patrick Mahomes as your QB, right? So how much of a negative really is that? If that's your weakness, I mean, teams that have that as their strength doesn't really help them very much.
But we've already said pass rushing is the most important facet of defense. And
I agree.
Not only are they bad there, but Patrick Mahomes negates most of the pass rush prowess that you have. So the reason I feel good about the Chiefs squeaking this one out, catching them early is, I think, the right time to get them. Now, they're going to have a little bit of a letdown playing Baltimore that first week. Baltimore is really going to want to exact some revenge on the Chiefs, and that Cincinnati rivalry might be the best rivalry in the NFL right now. Those two teams, no love lost. So it could be a little bit of a letdown game. But Kirk Cousins is coming off a torn Achilles. They have a new coach, new offensive coordinator, and they picked Michael Penix in the first round. I would be a little bit more worried if they drafted a first-round pass rusher. I think that would have really rounded out that defense and made them possibly a true Super Bowl contender in a weak NFC. But also, this is an NFC game, and sometimes I don't think teams get up as much for the Falcons will be up for it because it's the Chiefs, but I don't know that the Chiefs will be up for this game as much as they would be for an AFC game, if that makes any sense.
Sure. It doesn't matter as much, obviously. I don't know how much of that is really there on the players' side of things. I mean, I think they'll be up. It's prime time. I just think that after the Ravens and Bengals, got to come out healthy. Come out healthy. So
that dome will be rocking. It's going to be a fun game. I'm thinking about going because it's fairly close to me. It's like 3 or 4 hours away. Number 2, safety Chamari Connor takes a huge step forward and becomes one of the team's best defenders.
What constitutes one of the team's best defenders? Because I won't say over Chris Jones or Karlaftis or probably Drew Tranquil or Nick Bolton or Trent McDuffie. So what constitutes one of the best?
It's definitely not over. I mean, Chris Jones, no way. Trent McDuffie, also no way. But I think there might be a conversation after that if he ends up being as good as I think he can be as a corner safety combo that can kind of do what Tyrann Mathieu did when he was here, that very few players in the NFL can do, especially given the way Spags has developed players like Charvarius Ward, like L'Jarius Sneed. The guy is extremely sticky in coverage. We saw that at the end of last season. I was very, very impressed. I wasn't the only one. So I'll say in that, I don't need to put him over Karlaftis or over Bolton or just in that zone, the second tier of talent on the Chiefs defense behind Chris Jones and Trent McDuffie.
Sure. By the way, I want to give a shout out to Greg Coleman. Appreciate you subscribing. Thank you, Greg. I'll say with that, because I think Chamari Connor is going to be the starting slot corner. I think
they'll move him around, right?
They'll move him around. He's not going to play outside corner.
No,
he's not fast enough. That's not his game. So how you label him at cornerback or safety, I don't think matters. Chess piece, defensive back. I don't care how you label him. He's going to see a lot of the field. Talking with Matt Derrick yesterday, we kind of were in agreement here where Jaden Hicks will be on the field as well in dime package. He'll be almost in the box. What that means for Chamari, we'll see. But I did think it was interesting that two players name dropped Chamari Connor with just pretty much unprompted. One was semi-prompted with Trent McDuffie, and the second one was I believe, Nick Bolton brought up Chamari Connor unprompted. That tells me something. Tells me a lot. They also brought up Nick Jones a little bit, and we heard Kelvin Joseph's name being thrown around. That's an outside guy. But when it comes to the slot, I think you're looking at Nick Jones or Chamari Connor. I think Chamari Connor just brings more to the table. What he's done in a limited sample size as a rookie was damn impressive. He's already exceeded expectations in my mind. I think in the Chiefs' mind, they talked about it. They go, yeah, we didn't know he was going to be this. Like, they thought he was going to be like a special teamer, occasionally break in case of emergency. He's not going to get beat too bad. But Chamari Connor has evolved already as a rookie. We saw it last year. I'm with you. I think Chamari Connor, if I had to get one guy I think has like a breakout year, Chamari Connor. Matt Derrick said, I can't even count Chamari as a breakout candidate because he broke out last year in his mind, which I thought was kind of fascinating. You give me one guy, I think it's Chamari.
The dude was blanketing George Kittle in the Super Bowl. He was surgically attached to his hip. He looked incredible. I'm just very high on him, and I agree. I think he's going to be the most improved player. We talked about Leo Chanel as a possibility there too. Maybe FAU, because he hasn't shown us much. He hasn't had the chance to show us much. So if he realizes and taps into some of that ceiling, he could be a guy there. But I'm glad we're in agreement about Chamari Connor. He's a very exciting Chief. Number 3, edge Charles Omenihu will be back to full strength before the playoffs.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Before the playoffs.
All this agreement, full strength, like as
yeah,
good as he
go.
was before he got hurt
in
that Ravens game.
I think he's back before week 10. Easy. I think he's back before week 10. That's like my okay. If he's not back week 10 at all, I'm getting a little nervous, right? It gives him a long time to ramp up. Like a long time for game action. Before the playoffs, I think, hell yeah. You know, he's posting videos and all that stuff right now. And it's not just for social media and to hype fans up. Part of it's because he wants to get paid. He wants to show this is a big year for him. Coming off of an injury like this, missed games last year for his suspension. He needs to make an impact in the limited amount of games he's in because he wants a new contract. He sees all these edge rushers and the contracts that are being handed out right now. He sees that. He was good last year in the limited amount of time he was there. But now you got to do it all over again, and this time after an injury. He's damn motivated. Very motivated. So I think he's for sure full strength before the playoffs.
Yeah, and his last contract, I think, was a little bit affected by some off-the-field stuff that we've gotten into before. We don't need to dive back into that, but I think it might have affected his payday a little bit. So I agree with you. He's underpaid. He's underrated. He was extremely dominant once he got ramped up and going. Those last, I don't know, 6 weeks of the season, he was getting a sack every game at least. He was causing fumbles. He was really wreaking havoc on offensive lines. So his rehab seems good. I mean, I'm not someone who likes to read too much into the Instagram, Twitter offseason hype, but
because then Justin Ross is a 1,200-yard receiver.
Yeah, and LRZ is the next Christian McCaffrey, right? So, but he's working hard. He's clearly working hard. It seems like he's on schedule, and I think he'll be back. So let's look at number 4, Kingsley. It's been a while since I've said his name. Let's see if I land this. Suamatia. No, not.
Kingsley Suamatia.
Suamatia. The Ia is what gets everybody.
It's E-I-E-I-O. You said Nelly earlier.
Yeah.
It's really not, but I wanted to at least make that because of the Nelly reference.
Great callback.
It's called the callback.
Great. Plant and payoff, baby.
Shake your tail feather.
Kingsley Suamatia beats out Wanye Morris and becomes the starting left tackle no later than week 7, right after the bye.
So I'm alone in this one. It feels like I'm the only one who thinks that Wanye Morris is going to be the left tackle. I'll say no, but I wouldn't be surprised. Apparently, like 90% of the fans think it's going to be Kingsley Suamataia. A lot of the media that I've talked to are leaning that way. You know, Matt Derrick was talking about maybe it's Donovan Smith or another veteran that they bring back. That's what he was talking about yesterday. I'm still team Wanya Morris, but it sounds like I'm probably wrong. But, you know, I'll go down with the ship. I'm a captain. I'm the captain of the Wanya Morris fan club. So I will go down with the ship singing, I guess, God Bless America. Or
Country
Lee
Grammar.
Or Lee Greenwood. Is that okay? Can I sing and I'm proud to be an American?
Sure.
Okay. If you don't tear up when they play that, like at a baseball game for the veterans, I don't know what to tell you. You have no heart. Every time they play that song, I just tear up. I was at the Royals game on Sunday that came on, and I was.
You were looking around. Did somebody cut some onions? Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I put this in because I was worried we might have too much agreement today. I didn't know on Jones, but I thought some of these earlier ones, and we seem to be on opposite sides on Suamataia and Wanya Morris. I like Wanya Morris. I think he's a swing tackle. Part of this is wishful thinking because I think Kingsley can be, if he realizes his full upside, he can be a very, very good player because athletically, he is an absolute freak of nature. So I think I want this to happen. I think a lot of Chiefs fans want this to happen. We're kind of wish casting, projecting this. That might be part of why it's 90-10 because we saw Wanya last year. He was fine, but he didn't beat out Donovan Smith, and Donovan Smith was also fine. I guess someone like, has Charles Leno signed yet? There might be.
My point though is Wanya did that as a rookie. Okay, that was a rookie, and I've
fairly
said
raw
time
as a
and
rookie,
time
right?
again, yes, and I've said time and time again, offensive linemen, the biggest jump is year 1 to year 2. Offensive linemen, edge rushers, year 1 to year 2, that's when you see the biggest jump. I'm very high on Kingsley long term. I am. Like, I think he is the future left tackle of the Chiefs. My main point is, don't rush it. Don't try and force it a year early when you're trying to three-peat. Put your best guy out there, even if it might, for 1 year, hinder some sort of development. Put out your best 5. And I think Wanya, at this point, would be part of the best 5. I think the year following, this year, 2025, I think you say, yeah, Kingsley Suamataia is your left tackle and Wanya Morris is probably your right tackle if they get out of the Juwan Taylor contract. That, to me, makes the most sense. It does. I would 100% agree. But in a year when you're trying to three-peat, I want to see Kingsley develop as well. But I always have concerns with rookie left tackles, especially those not drafted top 5. It's a hard position, a hard transition. I love Kingsley, but I think it's going to take a year.
Totally fair based on historical precedents. I think that is fair. Side tangent, side hot take here. I think Juwan Taylor is going to be much better this year. The penalties kind of disrupting his flow and getting in his head so early last season. I don't think he ever got in a rhythm or felt extremely confident in Kansas City so far. They're going to give him a season off to work on his technique, to reset. I don't know, maybe see a sports psychologist or therapist. He'll come back. He'll have it straightened out. This is a player who was very, very good as a pass blocker, elite as a pass blocker his last season in Jacksonville. So I'd be surprised if there wasn't some level of resurgence there.
Yeah, I think he's going to be better this year just because I don't think they call that many penalties against him next year. Although I will say it reminds me of the whole Lou Holtz. If you guys remember Lou Holtz and one of his quotes about one of the quarterbacks, it was along the lines of he threw like 13 interceptions the year prior, right? The quarterback. And he goes, you aren't throwing 13 interceptions this year. And the quarterback goes, oh, why? What, we doing something a little different this year? A little more checkdowns? Or when he goes, no, because once you throw 12, you're sitting your ass on the bench. So I'll tell you, Juwan Taylor getting that many penalties next year, because if he does, he's sitting his ass on the bench.
Yeah, because they've got some young guys behind him. And in 2025, it will sting, but I think they can get out of that contract. And they might want to. So our last one here, number 5, and I've kind of been harping on this, but I really believe it. The Chiefs' second string running back isn't on the roster yet.
Second string. If you said third string, the answer I think is obvious. But I will also say yes, because I think Clyde is going to be the third string. I think Clyde is going to be RB3. So I think yes. I don't know who it's going to be. I look at the running back free agent market. It's not great. I don't think it's going to be Jerick McKinnon. I think they're done with that. I think. Could be completely wrong. They bring him back, and it's basically the same RB room as last year. I don't know who it's going to be, though. I really don't. I don't know if they're going to wait until, veteran cuts. Maybe. I just can't see them going into this season with Pacheco, Clyde, and then Deneric Prince, or with the Amani Bailey. Like, I think Amani Bailey, Deneric Prince, Keontae Ingram, that's your practice squad stash. Like, that's I think that's your RB.
LRZ, right?
That's on your practice squad. I don't know where they go. I don't have the answer. I've looked. I've tried to figure it out in my dome. I don't know. I know people want Carson Steele. I don't see that. I don't think
he's a fullback, right?
Yeah,
kind of a hybrid.
I don't see that. That RB room of Pacheco, Steele, and Clyde doesn't seem to make any sense. It doesn't.
They need some pass catching juice there. I think.
Agreed. We're on the same page. I just.
Who?
I
the
don't
question
know.
is who?
Yeah, it was Antonio Gibson made some sense. I think we were talking about Antonio. Austin Eckler and that contract that might have made some sense.
This is my obligatory Alvin Kamara mention right now. So they're going to want out of that contract if you look how big it is next year.
As long as Chris Lamons and him don't hang out.
Right. This is a team that once signed Le'Veon Bell midseason. This is a team that signed Shady McCoy right before a season. So I would not be surprised if they find this guy very late in the process based on another team releasing a veteran or trading a veteran. That is definitely, I think, a possibility. I like Clyde as a number 3. He's not explosive. He's not big, but he's sure-handed. He knows his assignment. He's going to run hard. He's a good RB number 3. He's a good, dependable player. He knows the system. The guys like him. I don't want him gone. I think we can move on from his draft stock and realize
sunk cost, baby. It's a sunk cost.
But I don't think he's our number 2. I think we need someone a little bit more like the Jet. We need a little bit more juice. We need a little bit more pass catching versatility. Some guy who can take these dump offs and really strike some fear in the heart of defenses. And I don't think Clyde does that.
No. Yeah, I don't know, man. This is I've been asking people. I've been searching, waiting, wishing. You believe in superstition? I was thinking Jack Johnson. That was bad.
Yeah, I mean,
I just don't know. I don't know, man. And I try and be as open-minded, and I know a lot of people are talking about Steele. I just don't see it, and I can't try and force myself into believing it's Carson Steele. I don't want to lie and just say because he's on the roster and talk myself into it. I need to see more from Carson. Yeah, I saw the nice one-handed catch today from Holmes behind the back. That's great. That ain't happening. He's also wearing shorts and a T-shirt, okay? When the pads come on, when we're down there, when I'm at training camp, when I'm in St. Joe, and I start seeing Steele do a little more, then yes, maybe I'll buy in. But as of right now, I don't see the fit personally. Not saying it can't happen, but I need to see it in person. The show me state, I got to be shown.
Yeah, I think he's a fullback. So I wish I had the answer here. I think the Chiefs showed good discipline not getting into an overheated running back market. If you recall at the start of free agency, DeAndre Swift, Tony Pollard, all these guys went boom, boom, boom. Saquon Barkley. There was a lot of money being thrown around to running backs. And I think the Chiefs just said, we've learned our lesson, putting too much capital into this position. With Mahomes and Andy Reid, this is a very running back friendly system. We believe in Isaiah Pacheco. We know Clyde is serviceable. We're not going to panic we're going to wait to find an answer later in the offseason or maybe even in the season.
Yeah, I like Lauren Shank's comment, actually. Good one here. Miami might decide they don't need Jeff Wilson Jr. fourth on their depth chart. Someone will be a surprise cut before week 1. Yeah, I think Jeff Wilson Jr. is an interesting one. Good point there. I like that, Lauren.
I love Jeff Wilson Jr. Not the most like dynamic player in the world, but can block his ass off, runs hard, really smart player, really tough player. Maybe a little Pacheco-ish, but also what if the rookie Jalen Wright seizes control of that job along with Devon Achane, and Raheem Mostert is the guy who is suddenly redundant. I mean, now he's pretty old himself.
Dog, I'm all in.
Yeah.
I'm all in.
Yeah, I mean the old explosive, underused in their 20s running back has been a good archetype for the Chiefs. So let's go back to that well after Jet to Raheem Mostert, who I believe is the oldest. Either him or Latavius Murray has got to be the oldest running back in football, right?
I think it's Lat Murray. I think Lat Murray was like 34 or 35, if I'm not mistaken.
Unless Frank Gore comes back, which I'm not ruling out, even though his son is now in the league.
Yeah.
Great. I agree with that call, Lauren. They have an abundance of running backs down there in Miami. There's a couple of players that I'm forgetting that I saw. Not Ahmed. Anyway, they've got a lot of running backs, so maybe that's the answer. Great call. But that's our show for today. It's officially closing time. Props to our chat and members. We appreciate you. Subscribe to the AA podcast anywhere you can find podcasts: Spotify, YouTube, Apple. Like Sterling said earlier, those 5-star reviews really, really help us. And we're going to try to do a better job of reading those here on the show. Join us next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Central. That's our somewhat new time that we're really liking to get the after work crowd in here on the Arrowhead Addict channel. Until then, go Chiefs.